This is VOA News. I'm Marissa Melton. The gunman who killed 12 people at a Virginia Beach government building on Friday had emailed his employers a resignation letter hours earlier. City Manager Dave Hansen said Sunday that the suspect, a longtime public utility employee, had notified his superiors on Friday afternoon about his intention to quit his job. Hansen said the employee was not in trouble at work.
To my knowledge, the perpetrator's performance was satisfactory, that he was in good standing within his department, and that there were no issues of discipline ongoing.
Hansen said all but one of the murder victims were Virginia Beach City employees. The other one was a contract worker. Officials said 4 others were wounded in the shooting at Building 2 of the city's municipal complex. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Sunday the United States is willing to hold unconditional talks with Iran to ease tensions between the two countries. Pompeo said we are prepared to engage in a conversation with no preconditions. He also urged the International Atomic Energy Agency to keep an eye on Iran and said the United States is doing its part.
Independently of that, we're doing our work to make sure that Iran never ends up in a place where it can have a nuclear weapon.
But Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said in an interview on the ABC News Network in the United States that new talks with Washington are not very likely. A cruise ship lost control as it docked in Venice on Sunday, crashing into the wharf and hitting a tourist boat after suffering engine failure. Tourists on land could be seen running away as the ship scraped along the dockside. 4 people were slightly injured. They're okay. You're listening to VOA News. President Donald Trump said on Twitter Sunday that America has had enough with Mexico. On Fox News Sunday, acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney said there are a couple of steps the Mexican government can take, starting with securing its southern border with Guatemala to block Central American migrants from crossing into the United States.
Most of the people who are coming in through Mexico now are not Mexicans. They are from Guatemala and El Salvador, other countries south of Mexico. That border is only a quarter as long as the border with the United States.
President Trump threatens to impose a 5% tariff on Mexican exports sent to the United States unless it blocks the migrants short of the U.S. border. The U.S. State Department will now require almost all applicants for U.S. visas to submit social media, email, and telephone information, meaning those applying for immigrant and non-immigrant visas will have to list all social media usernames, email addresses, and telephone numbers used in the past 5 years. The requirements affect about 15 million people. Only applicants for diplomatic and official visas could be exempt from the new rules. Visa applicants will also be asked if any family members have been involved in terrorist activities. Acting Defense Secretary Pat Shanahan is on a trip to Asia, where he's made it clear that China is his #1 concern. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb has more from Singapore.
Speaking to an audience at the annual Shangri-La Defense Forum, Shanahan said the U.S. would not ignore Chinese behavior, which he says has threatened prosperity in the region. And China has continued to project more military power beyond its borders, most notably by constructing artificial islands in the South China Sea and placing heavy weapons on them to support territorial claims not recognized under international law.
They argue that it's defensive. It looks like it's a bit overkill.
Recently, the U.S. has pushed for more international patrols in the South China Sea, including one last month with Japan, India, and the Philippines. Carla Babb, VOA News, Singapore.
The Pentagon has told the president's staff to keep the military out of politics after someone from the Trump administration directed the Navy to keep the warship USS John S. McCain out of sight when President Trump visited Japan. Defense Secretary Shanahan addressed that issue with reporters earlier today.
The White House Military Office gave a directive that the USS John McCain should be hidden from view. The directive was not carried out.
And at least 2 bodies were retrieved on Sunday off Libya's Mediterranean coast after a boat carrying dozens of Europe-bound migrants capsized. I'm Marissa Melton, VOA News.